Hi, I'm Hannah, and you are listening to the L&D Leaders podcast. We talk about what it really takes to make learning collaborative, connected to everyday work, and part of how organizations actually grow. In today's episode, we are exploring how leadership is evolving and what it takes to build the capabilities leaders need in an AI-driven world. My guest today is Patrik Hedljung, Manager of AI Adoption at Scania. Welcome, Patrik. It's really amazing to have you here.
Thank you very much. Happy to be here.
Patrik, you have been more than 25 years on this field of learning and development, and you have basically spent your whole career helping leaders grow through value-based leadership, cultural transformation, and now the AI and digital transformation that we will also further discuss today. But before we dive deeper into the topics of leadership and AI, could you just start by introducing yourself and telling us a bit about your current role and things that you are working with?
Yeah, absolutely. And oh my God, you said 25 years. Suddenly I feel old, or I feel like I must be old, even though I don't feel that way. Currently, my role is within IT at Scania. I've been in the leadership development space for pretty much my whole career, but since December last year, my role is now within IT, but of course I bring with me my perspective that comes from L&D and leadership support, leadership development. But I think that what we see now with AI is too big of a change not to just completely immerse myself in it and try to support our organization also from an L&D and leadership perspective, and not leave it to IT and technologists just to drive that agenda.
Oh, yes, that sounds like a really comprehensive background. So I'm really looking forward to the discussion today. What if we get started with some rapid questions? What is a small daily habit that helps you learn and stay curious in your everyday?
I would say one habit that I have is I try to test things as quickly as possible. Early on, I sort of started compiling a big list of things that I would try, but I never find the time. So now what I do is if I see a new prompt, if I see a new tool, whatever it is, I try to test it as soon as possible. And I think that's the only way to possibly keep up with what's happening. There's this old idea that if you can do it in less than 2 minutes, you're better off doing it right away rather than postponing it to later, because then you will take more energy to put it somewhere, remember it, then bring it up again. So if you get it in less than 2 minutes, do it right away. And that's what I'm trying to live by that.
Wow, I love it. That sounds like an early adopter work. And then the other rapid one, if your team would describe you in one word, what word would that be, or what word would you hope that would be?
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's what they would choose, but I hope they would say curious, because that's what's been driving me my whole professional life, and certainly now with AI.
I would say that that's easy to also relate. So you already gave us a glimpse into what you are actually working with today, but could you tell us a bit more about your background and how have you gotten there where you are just today?
I've never really had a straight path. I'm not one of those people who made a plan very early on and then sort of followed that path. I've been much more driven by curiosity and lust and what felt more interesting at the moment. Education wise, my background is in pedagogy, psychology, change, communication, broad fields, some sociology, but also some quality measurement work and sort of more structured methodological approaches. I was in the outdoor industry for a few years, leading expeditions. And there, my interest for leadership really got sparked, because it was very clear that what differentiated one expedition from another was leadership. So then I got interested in the leadership, started learning about it, went back to school, and then eventually started developing leaders for other organizations. And so I've been with ICA, the Swedish food chain, for quite a while. I've been with the Scout movement, developing and training leaders, both as a volunteer and professional for many years. I had my own consultancy company for a while, and then I joined Scania. What is it now? Almost 8 years ago. Also working with leadership development, and did that up until ChatGPT came out to the broad audience 3 years ago. Then I just changed completely because I understood, fantasized that this will be such a big impact.
And it definitely was.
Yeah, well, I guess we'll still see. The jury is still out, but everything's pointing to it. I didn't want to miss out on that journey. Plus, I thought I had maybe some pieces of the puzzle to contribute with from a sort of L&D HR perspective, not only from the tech perspective. So internally, I started arguing for AI, and first in L&D, HR, and then eventually connected with those within IT who are sort of responsible for the tech side of AI, and said that maybe we should do this together, me from a more change management perspective and you guys from the technical side. And that's what we've been doing for a few years now. And since December, I've also formally switched organization.
That is definitely an amazing journey. And I think that it's really fascinating that you're having so many lenses to look at the organizational development, learning, and the AI adoption.
Well, I think this is also one of those things that cannot be solved from one angle only. If you talk to people from IT or from HR, for that matter, L&D or legal, they will tend to have relatively narrow focus, and that's totally fine and understandable, I think. But I think that just makes it even more important that we lean into it together. I don't think there should be one department or one perspective leading the AI transformation, but rather a number of people working together.
Yeah, I think that you are already kind of opening up your own approach to corporate learning and the ways to learn within organizations today. But how has that evolved during the past years, especially when all the uncertainty, complexity have also increased within organizations?
At least when we talk about large organizations like Scania, 55 to 60,000 plus employees, global, 100-plus-year-old organization, change takes time. We have this yearly processes, and our transformation is more based on continuous improvement than big leaps. And I think that we need to have a considerably more flexible and iterative approach to L&D as well. And we cannot, our processes are usually, many of the cases, it takes a year between idea for a course and when it's actually launched, because it involves writing RFQs or specifications, contacting vendors, comparing, and then start planning, and then start marketing a course, etc., etc. We just don't have that time now. An example is we have this course now at Scania that is focusing on developing LLM-based solutions, and it's a rather technical course, and that field changes so quickly. So even if we have just 6 months perspective, what we end up delivering won't be up to date. So really need to have a much more fluent approach. But that challenges things in a big organization because we're not really wired for it.
Yeah, of course. As you are having so many perspectives on learning, leading transformation, and overall like leadership development, and now you are already saying that we are doing things, or as how we are actually seeing learning. So I think that you are, if I understood correctly, you are also talking about the Scania perspective here. What is Scania's learning strategy approach today?
One thing that's really speaking for this transformation is our focus on what we call the Scania learner, which is really stressing the importance that the individual has a responsibility to own your self-learning journey, to have agency in your own professional life, not to wait for someone else to come tell you what you should do or what the best way forward for you is, but to actually have that mandate yourself. And the Scania learning strategy supports that. And it has done that for several years. But I think it's before AI, it was more a nice slogan than a stark reality. Because now that is definitely the situation. You cannot really expect your manager or someone on a more aggregated level to have what's best for you in sight from a very individual perspective. Now, having said that, we also have a lot of our processes within L&D are quite slow, even though philosophically we want to encourage the Scania learner. In reality, there's still a lot of challenges when it comes to providing the tools and opportunities and sort of structure around that. But that's the ambition and the direction for sure.
I may be a bit biased, but at least the conversations where I am currently with many organizations is highlighting the importance of collaborative learning or social learning that has become really important part of organizations' learning and development work. And when people are trying to understand and apply something new, I would imagine that also comes to AI, the social learning aspect and cooperation come even more important. But what role does social learning and collaborative learning have in Scania's approach to learning?
Up until COVID, all our courses and the learning that we provided was very much supporting collaborative learning. And even in classroom courses, we're always stressing a lot of discussions and knowledge sharing and reflecting together. The informal learning wasn't as big, maybe, but at the same time, we have a very flat culture where you can approach pretty much anyone in the organization about pretty much anything. I think all supports that type of learning. And we also have this program within Scania called To Do a PEP, which stands for Personal Enhancements Program. So if you're interested in an area other than your own, you can do a temporary internship with that department. So there's a lot of that in place. But then the pandemic hit, and suddenly people started working from home. And our learning experience platform, Degreed, got launched, and suddenly everything was going to be, on demand, online, and it got very lonely. And I think a lot of organizations also sort of leaned on, okay, now you can learn at the speed of work and all these slogans. And the idea was that you can learn anything you want by just accessing a course on LinkedIn Learning or Coursera or wherever. Then eventually we realized, okay, it's not the availability of courses that matter. There's no shortage of courses out there. On the contrary, there is too much. So just because you can access it doesn't mean you will. And I think now when we're going into AI space, that will become even more important, because what we see clearly is that people are experimenting a lot on their own. And we have innovators, early adopters. They're hacking away. They're the type of people that will stay up until midnight looking at YouTube and finding the information that they need. But they do it by themselves, and they don't all necessarily share with their colleagues. And I would say, at least at Scania, we're at that point now. There's quite a big divide between those who are the self-driven learners who keep themselves updated and those who are waiting more to be invited or shared with. That's definitely what we're facing now, which is also challenged by the fact that people don't have time. And that's where I think leadership also comes in to provide that time and to provide those forums and that space for people to learn from each other.
Yeah, but that's so interesting that there are people who are probably spending a lot of their even like free time to learn, to discuss with the AI. But how can we actually take those as advantages for the whole organizations? And how can we develop our capabilities and learn together and then implement those learnings into the new ways of working? So I think that that's really, really inspiring and one of the crucial parts of our work today. How do we take those new things in so that it's not on single employees to actually develop their ways of working?
Yeah, and I think that type of learning needs to be prioritized and celebrated and incentivized. And a lot of the rest of work today is more about making things more efficient, producing more with less time. And as a leader, I think it's crucial that you need to believe in this collaborative learning, because otherwise you will never prioritize it. So it takes a little bit of a leap of faith from a lot of leaders, I think, to make that happen.
Yeah, definitely. One of the main topics for us today is the leadership development, and I think that you are nicely already taking us into that path.
My brain always goes that route.
I see. I love it. What do you think about the capabilities and what is our need? Into what direction should we go? What are the most critical capabilities that the leader should focus today?
Great question. And I think there's probably not one single answer. There rarely is.
That's also true.
At least at Scania, and I think that's true for many organizations. A lot of organizations I speak to say the same thing, that their AI is being driven bottom up. And that's also the case at Scania. To a large degree. That's not because we have unintelligent leaders by any means, but I think it comes down to time. Very generally speaking, if you're a manager today in a big organization, you never have more time than you have tasks. There's always more to do than you have time for. So if you would have learned about AI during the last 3 years, it would have been because either you have very natural interest in technology, that might have helped, or if you, for some reason, have managed to carve out time for yourself to learn about AI. Most leaders have not. But as an employee, you have more flexibility. Not saying that people don't have things to do, but generally you have more flexibility. So I would say that we see very much the transformation is happening bottom up. And coming back to your question, what are core competencies in leaders and leadership moving forward? I think as a leader, you really have to understand enough about the technology in order to be able to lead your team, to lead your business, your people. You don't have to be an AI expert by any means, but you need to understand enough about it to sort of grasp its potential, to grasp its risks, to grasp the fact that it will impact all roles, all white collar roles will be hugely impacted. And your role as a leader is to, if not drive, then at least manage that transition. Everyone reporting to you will be highly affected by this. And I think that's a big challenge for a lot of leaders who aren't necessarily naturally technically interested. That's not why they became leaders. Maybe they were interested in people. Maybe they were interested in the subject area that they're now leading, whether that's law or production or mechanics. But just like any leader needs to have enough knowledge about the economy in order to make a budget, they have to have enough knowledge about AI in order to lead that transformation.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay,
For sure.
that's one thing.
Yeah, for sure.
And then we have, of course, all the things related to change management and uncertainty and in being able to live in a complex, ever-changing world, having good methods for learning. But I think this one, the AI is such a big thing that as a leader you have to somehow onboard yourself.
There are many capabilities you already mentioned, and all of them probably as equally important. But if we just choose one, being understanding the technology better, how are you helping leaders now to actually build those competencies in practice?
Since I'm coming from an L&D perspective, that was one of the things that I quite early started sort of orchestrating or doing what I could to move that frontier in a sense. At Scania, we have 5,000 plus something leaders, managers. And so we have a big machine, if you want to call it that, that trains leaders. We have our sort of bulk leadership programs in different levels with external vendors delivering them. And quite early, I managed to get AI into those programs so that as a manager, if you just go through the normal flow of leadership trainings, you will get it in one way or another. That's not enough, of course, because a lot of people have already gone through those programs or for different reasons don't. So we also need to reach them through other channels. And we're doing what we can, but I feel every day that it's not enough because I know the need is huge. The everyday situation for a manager, first line or middle manager is super stressful, and it's very difficult to find the time. So I'm very cautious about adding new things to their agenda, but rather try to tweak the things that are there already so that we can integrate knowledge about AI into those structures that already exist. So now we're moving into, and a lot of organizations in the same situation, we're moving into performance management cycles, so reviews and updating development plans, etc., which is something that usually takes quite a bit of time for managers. And the more direct reports they have, the more time it will take from them to have these discussions. And so there we try to provide AI support in those processes that they need to go through anyway, and thereby showing them also examples of, okay, here's a easy prompt you can use when you're going to set your development goals. And by introducing very practical examples, hope also to open their eyes for, okay, it can do this, or it works like this, or the more we can get people to use the technology, the more likely they will be to eventually say, okay, if I can do this for this process, I should be able also to do something similar for this other task I have.
I also wonder, are people really ready to share their experiences? And those leaders and managers, probably they have been used to knowing the answers and leading their team towards the new direction. But how is it for them to really learn something new?
Here, I think the organizational cultures that we have, and Sweden not the least, but also in other Nordic countries can work very well for us, because I would say that here it's not, as a leader, you're not on a pedestal in the same way as in some other cultures. And there is much more of a dialogue between manager and direct report, regardless of where in the hierarchy you are, to have more of an exchange. Maybe that's one of the best opportunities we have to create learning for leaders, given that the transformation is happening very much bottom up, to encourage people to take the opportunity and share some prompts with your manager next time you have a one-on-one. And this was something I did with my manager 2 years ago. Before I made the switch to IT, I used ChatGPT to create my development plan. And then I walked into the conversation with her and showed, okay, we don't have to start from scratch, because I'm already 70% down the road. And this is what I've done. Can we have a discussion about the results and my proposals instead of starting with, so what are your thoughts about the future and what?
Yeah.
No, I already had that conversation with ChatGPT.
Oh, yes.
We don't have to start there. We can say, oh, really? And then she got, interested and curious about, how did you do that? Or
I love your real life examples on how to prepare yourself into a development discussion, or how to actually just encourage people to share their prompts. Is there any other example of a real moment where you saw that the collaborative learning made the difference in how people are actually approaching AI, or how the adoption is actually happening?
Well, I guess at some point it also becomes a question of how do we define collaborative? Do we define collaborative learning as learning between humans, or do we define it as I learn with my AI? I think that line is going to be more and more blurred. I had my own sort of big aha moment when I cracked the nut how to switch the conversation so that I got ChatGPT to ask me questions rather than I asked it. I had this idea that when you organize a coaching training session, very traditional format is go through the concept, and then people break up into small groups, and then you practice this technique, right? And it's very difficult to get that practice to become very high quality, because both parties involved are beginners to coaching. It's quite difficult. And I thought, well, maybe I can have my coaching training together with ChatGPT. And then when I finally cracked the prompt to get that to happen, and it did a great job, and that's when I personally just went, oh my God, I will never be able to look back and stop this. I have to go all in, because this is going to be huge. But of course, that was me on my own. And then, of course, I tried to become the missionary among all my co-leadership development friends to see, okay, we have to go all in on this. This will change everything.
Yeah. And then there is also now when you mentioned your leadership colleagues or the AI colleagues that you are collaborating with, how are we then inviting all of them into a dialogue, and how are we then making sense of that together? How do we also appreciate the current culture, develop on top of the already existing culture? I would imagine that the ChatGPT, at least, it's not yet ready for supporting us with all of those things. And it's not easier to take those new learnings into a new context or implementing those actually. The time for the implementation is still needed within the organization. So how do we actually take all of those new learnings, take all of the competencies that we're having in the organization, and invite that dialogue, make sense together, and then plan on the next steps together?
Yeah, I completely agree, and that's why it's so crucial. I think that L&D is involved and in driving this transformation, because that's usually not a perspective that the more technical colleagues would have on this. The traditional software implementation is much more one directional. And to be fair, not all software implementations have a cultural effect. But here is such a big change and will have so far-reaching consequences. It also becomes, like with any change management initiative, becomes a matter of both pushing and waiting, and how can we incentivize and invite people to join the journey while at the same time being firm on the direction. And how long do we wait for everyone to catch up? Again, coming back to the importance of agency, and for the individual to realize that I need to be active here, as well as the organization needs to invite, then the individual needs to invite themselves to the
Of course.
conversation.
Of course, yes. It was probably one of the first things when I got to discuss with you for the first time that I got fascinated when you said that actually learning and development should be leading to AI adoption. And I couldn't underline more of how important it then is for the learning and development to take the ownership and to actually just say that, okay, we are driving this transformation and we are taking the facilitation ownership and supporting the whole organization to actually learn those new capabilities so that it's not sitting somewhere far from us in the IT or so, but it's actually really one of those core elements in our development. And when we're renewing the ways of working and renewing our culture, we are already taking that into action.
Yeah, I 100% agree, and it becomes a bit paradoxical now that I've of course changed organizations, so now I'm in IT rather than L&D, but I'm bringing very much that perspective into my work now. So I'm trying to be the L&D representative.
Oh yes, oh yes.
In IT.
Yes, and you definitely are.
But I mean, it's also, it so much depends also on what role L&D has in an organization. Do you have the mandate? Do you have the possibility to drive it, or is L&D more of a delivery organization that only reacts to what the business is asking for?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if that's the case, it's not an easy transition to sort of pick up that baton and say that, okay, we will help drive this transformation. The bigger the organization, the more political navigation it will take.
Yeah, but also if we trust that the culture changes conversation by conversations, then it's also the question on how are we getting into those conversations? How are we starting to take the ownership? How are we starting that movement towards more strategic function within the organization?
Yeah, I agree.
Hey, I was already asking of the future capabilities, and you already there said that that's not easy. But one final question. If you imagine our work life, let's say 5 years from now, what kind of a skill set then and mindset do you believe that every learning and development leader will need in their backpack within the next few years?
Yeah, who knows anything about anything that's happening more than 6 months from now?
No one knows. So that's
Yeah, and I love the question, and I love thinking about it. I'm not sure I have any clear answers. I mean, I've been in L&D for quite a few years, and I think when AI hit, in my own case, it was a combination of several things that made me sort of so interested in it. First of all, I think I have somewhat of a technical interest. I never studied technology. I've never been very good at it, but somewhere in the back of my head, there's an interest. That was one aspect. Another one was that I've been in L&D so long. I am very curiosity driven, and I had gotten to the point where I felt like there wasn't that much new. And I hate when older people say, we've tried that, it doesn't work. But I got to the point where I was becoming a bit cynical and thinking about new trends as, okay, that's just a new take on this old thing that we've been dealing with before. Coming back to your question about important competences in L&D moving forward, I think that you really have to be curious, to never think that you have the answer and be satisfied with that, And if you have invested time in your own learning before, I think that's nothing to compare to what you will need to do moving forward. The tools will change quicker than ever. The platforms will change quicker than ever. Our processes in large organizations are much, much slower than the technology changes. And of course, the capability of AI will also increase. And even if it didn't, even if it stopped today, we would still have years of work to catch up to the possibility of AI today. But there's very little that's pointing towards that stopping. One of my enemies is perfectionism. You can't wait till something is perfect anymore. You have to iterate. You have to experiment. You can't wait for the mandate. That's a big one, I think, in L&D. A lot of people are not taking the initiative because they don't have the mandate. But I say, screw that. Do it anyway. Start something. Experiment, iterate, try, demonstrate, invite.
Wow, there is a lot. Definitely there is a lot. But that was a big question. But thank you so much. Really, really, really insightful. Patrik, thank you so much for the fruitful conversation. I was really inspired by this moment together with you, and I appreciate the way how you so closely engaged the learning, leadership, and the AI together. That showed that adopting new technology is not about the tools only, but it's also about the growing mindset and the confidence to lead within the transformation and be staying curious when the world around us is changing and we need to change the old ways of working. You reminded us about the social learning transformation as well. How do we see that? How do we approach that in the future? And how do we make that the key part of the learning? I feel it's important for all of us that we're not learning about the AI as such, but we also learn together with the AI and learn together with our peers and colleagues. So,
well, thank you. It's always a pleasure to talk about AI and learning. So it's the perfect storm.
oh yes,
in a positive sense.
Oh yeah, oh yes, for sure. And of course, that is exactly what we want to keep exploring here in the L&D Leaders podcast, how learning helps people stay curious, human, and ready for what is coming there in the future. So thank you again, Patrik. It's been a pleasure. And if this episode resonated with you, come and be part of our conversations also going forward. You will find the link to join our community in the episode description, and we'd love to see you there. Thank you.
Thank you.